Arguably one of the most exciting announcements in today's Nintendo Switch 2 Direct was the final announcement of the day, and that is the announcement that we are finally getting a brand new Donkey Kong game. And not just any Donkey Kong game, but something completely new and different. Donkey Kong Bananza. So let's take another look at the trailer and see some of the interesting and bizarre things that you might have missed. So let's go ahead and get started. Buckle up, because there's quite a bit to look at here. Starting with the very first shot we see. I'll be honest, when I saw this, I was not thinking that this was a Donkey Kong game. But if we freeze it here, we can already see some hints of what this game is. First, we see this rock-looking dude with googly eyes, kind of. Somewhat harkens back to old Rare games with googly eyes, but we'll come back to the rock crystal people later. Next, we'll see these gold banana-looking rocks. I think that these are a very common piece of breakable terrain that will most likely be one of the main collectibles in the game. We will see a lot of these in varying forms throughout the trailer. We also see these pathways that at first kind of look like tree trunks, but they're actually ostrich statues of some sort. We also see a smaller broken egg and this huge egg with some different markings on them, including this design which I just noticed is two ostriches facing each other. Pretty cool. There's also some sort of collectible shiny coins that we all obviously will want to collect. On the right there's some spiky things, possibly keeping the player from being able to climb up the vines. You can make out more of the purple vines blocking the path on the left side as well. On the far left, we also see some really cool floating enemies. Lastly, you see this tiny little blue house. I have no idea what these are for, but in our very next shot, you can see another one in a completely different area. So clearly these little blue houses somehow tie together. This is obviously a new world or level in the game. I'm calling it Giraffe World until further notice. You can see spots on the piping on the left that look like giraffes. We have another little googly-eyed rock crystal guy, but this one is shaped different and kind of looks like, you guessed it, a giraffe. On the right we can see a giraffe-shaped cactus, and in the far back over the horizon we can see a rock shaped like a giraffe. We get a much better wide shot of this area later. The main visual on this one is the minecart. Can't have a DK game without minecarts. And I also really appreciate the set design with the banana fences. Nice touch. The last thing of note in this shot is some sort of pink glowing square tablet wall thing in the background. Can't really tell what it is, but the color scheme makes me think it's definitely something important. Next up is a snow level, and we can see the glowing tablet once again. There's some glowing rocks up top. This statue is in the shape of a horse. Not sure what that's about. This next pretty landscape shot shows a giant mountain peak that has been shaped like a bundle of bananas. There's some sort of barrel on the ground over there. And there's also some sort of portal on the ground to the right. Also pink and blue. Definitely seeing a color theme here from those more special looking items. Lastly, there's fire coming out of the ground, seemingly for no reason. Okay, here's where things start to get more interesting. It was at this point in the trailer at first watch, I was convinced that this was Mario Odyssey 2. This shot right here gives off huge New Donk City vibes. Not in the way that I thought they were the same thing or anything like that, but all the signs and girders made me really think this was some sort of new city following that same idea. But clearly it's not. This is something completely different. This is Ingot Isle, which, if you notice off the top, it's also spaced like a bundle of bananas, if I'm looking at it correctly. There's a bunch of neon signs, but we'll look a little closer at those later. Next, we get a shot down in the mines. We see a bunch of Diddy-looking monkeys mining. Now, obviously, I didn't think these were all Diddy Kong, but they sure do look like him. Long hats and everything. Also, huge shout out to the pink/red girders, calling back to the original arcade game, Donkey Kong. Also, these monkeys are mining gold, like this guy right here on the left. Clearly, the gold is a big deal in this world and setting. Finally, we get to see the big ape himself, Donkey Kong, sporting his new redesign. Also, look at those fur tufts. Our boy is still sporting his tie, thank goodness. But he does have a hat on, which I'm assuming is just for the mining purposes of this part and probably won't be a regular staple. But he does have pants now, and suspenders to go with them. Pretty wild. Next up, we get our first shot of DK's pants and behind, confirming that this is in fact a 3D platformer of sorts. We're back in the grass plains that we saw earlier, and now DK has a purple little rock buddy on his shoulder. We'll see more of him later. Cut to another shot of DK and his little purple buddy running through the snow. We see some gold frozen in ice, giving off some Mario Odyssey vibes. Also notice that DK's face seems to notice the gold and even turns his head and makes facial expressions toward it. I wonder if this is actually game accurate or maybe just added to the trailer. Now we're back in the desert, and this time DK runs by one of those googly-eyed rock crystal guys, only this time he transforms into a question mark, confirming at least that some of these guys can transform into different shapes. I assume that you can stop and ask this guy questions, or maybe he gives out hints or something. On the right, you can see some sort of store with a green dude with googly eyes sitting out front holding a balloon. Next, we see that DK can climb mountain and cliff sides. I'm curious how this will work, perhaps Breath of the Wild style with some sort of stamina, but maybe not. We can also see some colorful boxes, as well as another colorful portal on the ground. Also, dozens more giraffe-shaped cliffs are off in the distance as well. Next, we get to see DK's barrel roll, with some rock climbing mixed in. When DK gets to the top of this cliff, we do briefly get to see two monkeys at the top. We can also see a destroyed small boat at the top, hopefully not covered in blood. The following shot gives us a look at DK's downward punch, something we've seen DK do in the past, mostly in cutscene form, notably having enough force to punch the freaking moon out of orbit. But this time DK punches into the earth, leaving only his silhouette visible, until he comes mining out of the ground. DK shows off another move in which he destroys the ground and then proceeds to pull a giant boulder magically out from underneath him. Super cool. Then he proceeds to destroy everything in sight with said boulder. DK can also just begin tunneling downwards with little to no effort. This game looks to be a lot about smashing. Next we see DK holding a boulder that kinda looks to be similar color scheme to the purple thorn vines we saw earlier. Maybe just coincidental, but this pinkish purple rock is explosive. We can also see on the top right of the shot what appears to be some green pipes. In this shot, DK punches one of our rock crystal guys, but it doesn't appear to have killed him. But dang, DK, calm down. Here at the beginning, we see a very interesting poster. The words "mine, mine, mine" are visible. This is most likely alluding to the main bad guy of the game. I'm not sure this guy's name, but he's going to show up a lot in the rest of the trailer. There's another line at the top of the poster, but I can't really make out what it says. Maybe you can. Comment below and let me know what it says. But I'd assume this guy is large and in charge, forcing the monkeys to mine for him. The words "mine, mine, mine" having a double meaning, reminding the monkeys to keep mining, and that all of the gold and other precious stones belong to him. We're slowly starting to piece together a storyline, with more to come. We also see two really weird looking enemies, a spiky guy that we saw earlier, as well as another small enemy. Not sure what he is, possibly a stone alligator. DK then proceeds to do this sick front flip and smashes into the enemy with his own back, flinging the enemy into the spiky bad guy. The amount of particles that go into shattering in this game are freaking amazing. We also see DK do a second jump mid-air in this part, so double jumps confirmed? This next shot is really cool, and you miss it if it's at full speed. DK does another front flip into this gator enemy, crushing his rocky exterior, which then reveals the inner skeleton of the alligator made of gold. DK then punches the skeleton, sending it crashing into the other enemy further away. So yeah, gator enemies. I'm assuming they're not Kremlings. And DK is collecting gold, so is he harvesting the skeleton remains of his enemies? Color me interested. Also, these caves depict monkeys traveling on boats on the walls. Maybe we'll get some kind of monkey lore in this game? In our next shot, we see more of the purple-pink rock all around, similar to the explosive mineral we threw earlier in the trailer. We also see a wrecked small boat similar to what we saw earlier. I have a small theory about these boats later. We can also see another green pipe here. As DK rounds the corner, we can see some sort of bubble thing with some sort of machine with the big boss's face on it. No clue as to what this is, but clearly DK is probably going to break it. I hope. After a couple downward punches shots, we get to a new DK ability. After pulling a boulder from the ground, DK spins it and turns it into a vehicle of destruction. We can also see a few ostrich characters in this scene, as well as some sort of seed with a gap behind it, and some sort of target thing on the other wall. My theory is that the seed maybe creates some sort of bridge to the other side, perhaps with vines or something. Next shot we see some smaller monkeys, both with pickaxes, celebrating the reveal of our very first arrow or blast barrel, with a new and very different arrow design. DK then emerges from the barrel and blasts through some rocks to reveal that he was actually below Ingot Isles. In this shot, we get a really good look at the neon signs. I can see Gold Rush, Simple Tools, Karaoke, Poker Chimps, and there's a few others that I'm having a hard time reading. What can you see? This next shot got a lot of fans, myself included, very excited. This appears to be a 2D style perspective, calling back to the OG Donkey Kong Country levels of old. DK punches this rock that appears to have an enemy inside of it. The enemy goes flying and then explodes into orange goo. Whoa. We also see gold chunks floating in the air, possibly for the first time, as a collectible, not just something you find by mining underground. There's also a barrel on the trail, first we've seen like that, also cool. Next we get to see the minecart from earlier, as it makes its way to Giraffe World, as I call it. This shot gives us the best view to see the sheer scope of this area. Note the giant cliff or building on the left side that is shaped like the big bad guy from earlier. Also notice all the colored smoke coming out of the pipes in this world, as well as Donkey Kong's minecart, some sort of rainbow colored smoke. Very interesting. This next shot is by far one of the most jarring and downright confusing shots to look at in this trailer. Like, it's almost impossible to make out what's happening without slowing it down. But even then, I'm still not fully sure what I'm looking at here, or why they included this shot to begin with. Obviously, we have our rock crystal guys with the googly eyes. They appear to be in some sort of dance-off, changing shape constantly. But then, what are we seeing here in the foreground? There seems to be some sort of apes with weird rock headpieces on. They seem to be enjoying watching the googly-eyed guys dancing. I have no idea, guys. I love this next shot of Donkey Kong running up to this old monkey-looking dude. I can't tell if he's real or a statue, but if you slow it down, he kind of does move a little bit, so I'm thinking maybe he's real. He also has a portal glowing at his feet, so clearly it's gonna take us somewhere. I wonder if maybe this big ape sends us on a quest somewhere first in order to open the portal? We see some giant banana diamonds, or gems, or shiny rocks, whatever they are. They appear to have been broken and maybe put back together. Maybe that's the goal for Donkey Kong? He's clearly stoked to see them regardless. We finally get a close-up of Donkey Kong's little purple buddy. This close-up reveals that he has stuff printed on him, one being the photo of the big bad guy, and the second being the word void. Then in the second shot, we see the letters CO. So Voidco? Void Corporation? Is that perhaps the name of this evil corporation that is forcing these poor monkeys and apes to mine? Is Voidco the name of the little purple guy? Or maybe the main bad guy? Hard to say. I love that he jumps on DK's back and basically breaks the poor ape's back. Next we see a cool looking fish, which is probably a boss if I had to guess, but might also be friendly. It is pretty cute and colorful for an enemy. Later on we see DK talking to an ostrich. Do you think maybe we'll see Espresso in this game? There's also an egg-shaped building behind him. Later on we see DK punching another banana-shaped diamond. This kind of dispels my theory of putting them back together, but then as soon as Donkey Kong breaks it, he's shown doing a victory animation, similar to when Mario collects a star. So I wonder if these banana-shaped shiny things are the end goals in levels? This one seems to just be right in the middle of the level, so it's kind of hard to say one way or another. Also in the background you can see some bubbles. I wonder if you somehow ride on these bubbles, hence the flying enemy nearby? We can also see some smaller monkey shrines nearby, with apples in front of the shrines. Perhaps a nod to Zelda Breath of the Wild? We can also see a cliffside further up with an ape's face on it. Is this perhaps DK Isle? Probably not. Next shot, we get to see a giant tornado sucking thing. We can also see lots of tiny monkeys being sucked up in this. Part of me thinks this might be where the broken boats and monkeys come from earlier. Like maybe they got kidnapped or relocated somehow. We also see the glowing banana diamonds being sucked up, so that somewhat confirms that theory. We also see Ingot Isle getting pushed down into the earth, which is kind of confusing, but I'm pretty sure this happens at the very beginning of the game. I'll explain more of that in a second. I think originally Ingot Isle is located somewhere near the normal jungles in Donkey Kong Islands. But then after this moment, it's relocated somewhere else, either underground or just somewhere else entirely. Next, we get to see the final boss bad guy with some other baddies. I can only assume some of these guys will end up being bosses we fight, while some of them are probably just grunts. This shot is why I think all this happens in the beginning of the game. Notice how Donkey Kong isn't wearing any pants or suspenders. This is definitely how Donkey Kong's adventure kicks off, if I had to wager. Next up, we get to see what I assume is the Snow Ice World boss. He's pretty cool, and he's even wearing a patch on his sleeve showing the logo face of the big bad boss. Then we get to see a boss fight in Giraffe World with a big stone boss who also seems to have gold bones as well. I'm sure we have to chip away at this boss to beat him. Next, we see the bad guys hanging out with all the giant banana gems. Also, some purple goo around them, worth noting. We finally get to see a proper shot of what I'm assuming is our final boss. I really wish I knew this guy's name, but he's pretty cool looking regardless. He has some sort of banana contraption in his hand. I wonder what that is. There's some little circles coming off of it. I wonder if somehow this does mind control. I know Donkey Kong Country Returns has already had bad guys who use mind control, so that's probably not it. But then we cut to Donkey Kong, and he's clutching his head and screaming, maybe out of fear, or maybe that contraption does mess with your brain after all. Hard to say. Then we see this weird machine thing come crashing down. This looks to be the same one we saw earlier protected in that big bubble. Notice the circles and weird magic trails coming off it? Similar to the little thing the boss was holding. Maybe he controls these things? Then we get to see some other enemies or bosses, like a giant fireball with buff arms, followed by this pretty monkey lady boss, who also has a little thing that she's holding. You can also see the word Void on it, further pushing the theory that maybe Voidco is behind all this. We cut back to the big Voidco boss and see the banana contraption again, but this time it's a little different. This time the banana isn't as peeled as before. What could it all mean? The final shot is of Donkey Kong getting smashed by the release date of the game. Notice the street sign or caution sign behind him, as well as the fact that he isn't wearing any pants yet. So I think this scene takes place toward the beginning of the game after the giant tornado sucky thing. And that's everything we have so far, everyone. Maybe I'll keep making these as we start to see more trailers and coverage for this game as the release gets closer. I'm so glad to only have to wait till July for this game. It's so zany and weird and different. It's been really fun dissecting this trailer. I've got my theories, but I'm totally okay in the end if I end up being very wrong. But we shall see. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts. What did I miss? What are you most excited about? Check out more of our Megadads content as we cover heavily the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2. Have a great one, everybody.